The alien ship appeared without warning on a Tuesday morning. It was larger than anything humanity had ever built, a massive structure that blotted out the sun across 3 continents. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDS Valiant and felt his stomach drop. He had been a commander in Earth's defense fleet for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The ship hung in orbit like a dark moon, silent and terrifying. Within an hour, 50 more vessels joined it, forming a blockade around Earth. They came from every direction, cutting off any chance of escape. The fleet stretched across the sky, their hulls reflecting sunlight in strange patterns that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Lisa Kerrigan received the message at her command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. The transmission was clear and direct. The Galactic Concordance demanded Earth's complete surrender. Humanity had 72 hours to dismantle every weapon, every ship, and every defense system. If they refused, the aliens would destroy every major city on the planet. There would be no negotiation, no compromise, and no second chance. Lisa sat in her chair and read the message 3 times. Around her, officers and analysts worked frantically, trying to understand the alien technology, searching for weaknesses, calculating odds. Every calculation came back the same. Earth's fleet was outmatched by a factor of 50 to 1. Human weapons barely scratched the alien shields. A full-scale war would last less than a day, and Earth would lose. The president called an emergency meeting. World leaders joined through secure channels, their faces pale and drawn on the video screens. Some wanted to fight, others insisted they negotiate for better terms. A few suggested immediate surrender to save as many lives as possible. The arguments went in circles while the clock ticked down. Jake watched the alien fleet from his ship's viewpoint. The Valiant was one of Earth's newest warships, equipped with the best weapons humanity could build. It felt like a toy compared to the vessels surrounding them. He could see other human ships on his display, scattered across orbital space, waiting for orders that might never come. Every captain knew the truth. If they fired the first shot, they would all die within minutes. On the alien flagship, Emissary Vector addressed his command council. He was tall and angular, with skin that shifted colors in the dim light. This was his 43rd conquest, and he felt nothing but mild boredom. Humans were primitive, barely capable of interplanetary travel. They had discovered fusion power only 30 years ago. Their fastest ships took months to reach their outer planets. By concordant standards, they were children playing with fire. Vector's second officer questioned whether 72 hours was too generous. Why not demand immediate surrender? The emissary shook his head. The concordants had protocols. They gave every species time to accept reality. It made the occupation easier when the conquered population understood they had no choice. Fear and despair were useful tools. Back on Earth, Lisa made a decision. She left the meeting room while politicians argued and walked down a long corridor to a secured elevator. She descended 3 levels below the main command center to a door that only she could open. Inside, a single communications console waited in the darkness. She sat down and activated the encrypted channel. It took 30 seconds to establish a connection with a facility on the far side of the moon. When the line opened, she spoke 2 words into the microphone. "Activate Midnight." The response came immediately. Confirmation code required. Lisa entered a 64-character sequence from memory. She had memorized it 20 years ago and never written it down. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single word appeared on her screen. Acknowledged. She returned to the command center. The politicians were still arguing. The military officers looked defeated. No one noticed that Lisa's expression had changed. She sat down and waited, checking her watch every few minutes. On the moon's dark side, massive doors began to open. Computers that had been dormant for years suddenly came online. In the asteroid belt, among the rings of Saturn, and in the depths of the Kuiper belt, Ships that had drifted silently through space for decades received wake-up signals. Their reactors sparked to life, warming slowly and carefully to avoid detection. Captain Kevin Drake opened his eyes in his hibernation pod. Red lights flashed around him as the pod drained its fluids and released the locks. He had been asleep for 3 years, waiting for this moment. His ship, the EDS Phoenix Rising, was parked inside a hollowed-out asteroid 200 million kilometers from Earth. The vessel had been built in secret, using technology that no one was supposed to have. All across the solar system, 300 ships began their preparations. Crews woke from hibernation, weapon systems ran diagnostics, stealth fields activated, bending light and sensor beams around hulls that were designed to be invisible. They began moving toward Earth on the slowest possible burns, staying in the shadows of planets and moons, using the sun's radiation to mask their heat signatures. Jake received new orders on the Valiant. Pull back to lunar orbit. Make it look like a retreat. He questioned the command, but Lisa's voice came over his personal channel. Trust me, Commander, do exactly as ordered. In 60 hours, everything changes. He obeyed, though it felt like cowardice. The human fleet withdrew, forming a defensive line near the moon. The alien ships advanced, tightening their grip on Earth. Vectar smiled. The humans were breaking already. By tomorrow, their leaders would be begging for mercy. Lisa watched the displays in her command center. The Concordance fleet was moving exactly as she predicted, drawing closer to Earth, concentrating their forces. They thought the battle was over before it began. They thought humanity had nothing left to fight with. She checked her watch again. 68 hours until the deadline. The Midnight Armada would be in position in 60 hours. That left 8 hours to execute the plan. Earth had been preparing for this day since they found the alien probe 2 decades ago. The entire planet had built weapons in secret, trained soldiers in hidden facilities, and waited for the inevitable moment when the galaxy came calling. The Concordance expected Earth to kneel. They were about to learn that humanity had other plans. 20 years earlier, Dr. Marcus Brandt floated in zero gravity inside a research vessel near the edge of the solar system. His team had been tracking an unusual object for 3 months, something that moved in ways that natural asteroids could not. When they finally caught up to it, Marcus realized immediately that everything was about to change. The probe was roughly the size of a bus, made from materials that did not exist in any human database. Its hull had been damaged, probably by a micrometeorite strike, and it had been drifting powerless through the Kuiper Belt for who knows how long. Marcus and his team carefully transported it back to a secret facility on the moon. Inside the probe, they found wonders and nightmares in equal measure. The power source was a miniature fusion reactor that operated on principles human scientists did not fully understand. The propulsion system could bend space itself, allowing faster-than-light travel. And in the probe's memory banks, partially corrupted but readable, they found star charts. The galaxy was full of life, hundreds of civilizations, some thousands of years more advanced than humanity. The probe had belonged to a species called the Velkari, merchants and explorers who traveled between star systems trading goods and information. The charts showed trade routes, colony worlds, and something else that made Marcus's blood run cold. Warning markers. Dozens of systems marked with symbols that translated roughly to subjugated or conquered. Entire civilizations that had been absorbed by something called the Galactic Concordance. The pattern was clear. The Concordance expanded slowly but steadily, bringing primitive species under their control and stripping their worlds of resources. Earth was on the charts. Someone had been watching them. Marcus brought his findings to Admiral Lisa Kerrigan, who was then just a captain in charge of orbital security. She understood immediately what this meant. Contact was inevitable, and when it came, Earth would be defenseless. They had perhaps a few decades, maybe less. What happened next was the most secret project in human history. Every major government contributed resources. Scientists from every nation worked together in hidden facilities scattered across the solar system. They called it the Midnight Protocol, and its goal was simple. When the aliens came, humanity would not go quietly into the night. Captain Kevin Drake had been a test pilot for experimental spacecraft when the military recruited him for something new. They showed him a ship that looked nothing like the vessels he had trained on. It was sleek and dark, covered in panels that absorbed radar and light. The engines were hybrid designs, combining human engineering with technology reverse-engineered from the probe. Kevin's job was to test whether it actually worked. The first 3 pilots had died in explosions or catastrophic failures. The technology was unstable, dangerous, and barely understood. But Kevin had never backed down from a challenge. He named his test ship Lucky 7 and took it on its maiden voyage to Jupiter. The journey should have taken months. Kevin made it in 45 minutes. The faster-than-light drive tore a hole in normal space, pushed the ship through something that human physics could not explain, and deposited it exactly where Kevin intended. He spent 20 minutes orbiting Jupiter's moons, taking pictures to prove he had really been there, then jumped back to Earth. When he landed, Kevin found himself surrounded by military personnel and scientists who wanted to know everything. How did it feel? What did he see? Could it be done again? Kevin grinned and said it was the smoothest ride he ever had. He was lying. The experience had been terrifying, like falling through endless darkness while reality bent around him. But the technology worked, and that was all that mattered. Dr. Amanda Chen took the project in a different direction. She was a weapons specialist who realized that humanity's biggest advantage was not matching alien technology, but thinking differently about how to use it. The aliens had fought the same way for centuries. They expected missiles, energy weapons, and ship-to-ship combat. Amanda designed weapons that broke those rules. Her quantum disruption mines did not explode. They created fields that destabilized matter at the molecular level, causing ships to simply fall apart. Her singularity torpedoes generated microscopic black holes that existed for only a few seconds, but devoured everything within range. Her reality fracture bombs created tears in space-time itself, weapons so dangerous that even testing them was prohibited. The ships were built in secret across the solar system. Asteroid mining operations hid construction facilities inside hollowed-out rocks. Saturn's rings became a shipyard where vessels were assembled in the shadows of ice particles. Crews trained in facilities on Europa, Titan, and Enceladus, learning to fight in ways that no military had ever trained before. The strategy was not to match the aliens ship for ship. That was impossible. Instead, humanity would strike from the darkness, using stealth and surprise as their primary weapons. Every vessel in the Midnight Armada was designed to be invisible to conventional sensors. They could drift through space for years, powered down to minimum levels, waiting for the signal to wake up. Marcus spent 15 years overseeing the project. He watched as humanity transformed from a single-planet species into something more dangerous. They were not exploring the stars. They were preparing for war, building an arsenal that would make any invader pay a terrible price. Lisa rose through the ranks during this time, eventually becoming the admiral in charge of Earth's entire defense network. Only a handful of people knew about the Midnight Armada. Most politicians believed Earth's defense consisted of the conventional fleet, those visible ships that orbited the planet openly. The real strength was hidden. Waiting. Kevin trained hundreds of pilots in the use of faster-than-light drives and stealth technology. He taught them to think like predators, not soldiers. Strike fast, strike hard, and disappear before the enemy could respond. Never fight fair. Never give the enemy time to adapt. Amanda continued developing new weapons, always pushing the boundaries of physics. Some of her designs were so experimental that they existed only as blueprints, too dangerous to build without absolute necessity. But they were ready, waiting for the day when every weapon would be needed. 20 years of preparation, 20 years of secrets, 300 ships scattered across the solar system, their crews in hibernation, their weapons ready. Earth had bet everything on this plan. If it failed, humanity would be extinct within a generation. But if it worked, if the Midnight Armada could bloody the nose of whoever came to conquer Earth, then perhaps the galaxy would learn to leave humanity alone. Marcus sat in his lab on the moon when the Concordance fleet arrived. He watched the alien ships deploy across orbital space and felt a strange mixture of fear and satisfaction. This was the moment they had prepared for. Now they would find out if 20 years of work had been enough. He activated his communication terminal and sent a single message to Lisa Kerrigan. "All systems ready. Awaiting your command." 12 hours remained before the Concordance deadline when Earth's conventional fleet completed its retreat to lunar orbit. To the alien commanders, it looked like the final act of a defeated enemy. The human ships clustered together defensively, their weapons powered down, their formations tight and afraid. Emissary Vector watched from his flagship and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He ordered his fleet to advance. The massive alien vessels moved closer to Earth, tightening the blockade. They would be in optimal position for orbital bombardment within 6 hours. Vector had already selected which cities would be destroyed first to demonstrate Concordance power. New York, Beijing, Mumbai, and Sao Paulo would burn as examples. The rest of humanity would surrender immediately afterward. What Vector could not see were the 300 ships drifting in the darkness beyond his sensor range. They had been moving for 60 hours on the coldest possible engine burns, generating barely enough heat to register against the background radiation of space. Their stealth fields bent light and sensor beams around their hulls, making them invisible to everything except the most powerful detection systems at close range. Commander Jake Morrison sat on the bridge of the EDS Valiant and watched his tactical display. New contacts appeared on the screen, marked in blue. Friendly forces, hundreds of them, moving into attack positions. He had not known they existed until Admiral Lisa gave the fleet-wide briefing 3 hours ago. The revelation had stunned every captain in the conventional fleet. Earth had a secret weapon, after all. Jake's new orders were specific. When the Midnight Armada struck, the conventional fleet would provide support, but not engage directly unless necessary. They were the anvil. The hidden ships were the hammer. Captain Kevin Drake checked his systems aboard the EDS Phoenix Rising. His ship had traveled from the asteroid belt, using Jupiter's gravity to slingshot toward Earth while remaining in the shadow of the giant planet. Now he floated 10,000 kilometers above the ecliptic plane, looking down at the Concordance fleet like a hawk watching prey. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Katie Sullivan, armed the Singularity torpedoes. The weapons represented humanity's best understanding of physics, pushed to its absolute limit. Each torpedo would create a micro black hole that existed for exactly 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, it would devour anything within 500 meters. Katie had never fired one in combat. No one had. The tests had been conducted in deep space, far from anything that mattered. Now she would fire 6 of them at living targets, at ships filled with alien crew members who probably had families and dreams of their own. She pushed the thought aside. They came to conquer Earth. They started this. Admiral Lisa watched from her command center as the final pieces moved into position. The Midnight Armada had spread across millions of cubic kilometers of space, each ship positioned to strike a different target. They would attack simultaneously from every direction, overwhelming the Concordance's ability to respond. It was the largest coordinated military operation in human history. She opened a fleet-wide channel. Every ship, conventional and hidden, received her transmission. All vessels, this is Admiral Kerrigan. For 20 years, we prepared for this moment. The galaxy has come to Earth demanding our surrender. Today we answer. Show them what humanity is made of. All ships, weapons free. Execute Operation Midnight. The darkness came alive with death. 12 Concordance cruisers on the outer edge of their formation simply ceased to exist. Quantum disruption mines that had been seeded in their path activated simultaneously, creating fields that broke the bonds holding matter together. The ships dissolved into clouds of constituent atoms, leaving nothing but expanding debris fields. Before the alien fleet could react, the Midnight Armada decloaked. 300 ships appeared on sensors all at once, their weapons already firing. Energy lances cut through space, missiles accelerated to relativistic speeds, and exotic weapons that defied conventional physics tore into alien hulls. Katie fired her first singularity torpedo. She watched on her display as the weapon streaked toward a Concordance battleship, a massive vessel 3 times the size of any human ship. The torpedo penetrated the alien's shields and detonated. For 3 seconds, a microscopic tear in reality existed where the battleship's reactor had been. When the singularity collapsed, half the battleship was gone, simply erased from existence. The remaining half tumbled through space, atmosphere venting, secondary explosions rippling through its broken hull. The second torpedo caught a destroyer that tried to flee. The third and fourth struck another battleship, tearing it completely apart. Katie felt sick and exhilarated at the same time. The weapons worked beyond her wildest calculations. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships attacked from angles the Concordance had not protected, using the moon and Earth itself as cover. They fired, accelerated away at impossible speeds, and repositioned before the aliens could target them effectively. It was not a battle. It was an ambush on a massive scale. Emissary Vector stood on his flagship's bridge and watched his fleet die, 30 ships destroyed in the first hour. 45 after 90 minutes. The humans had technology that should not exist. They fought with tactics that violated every conventional understanding of space warfare. Where had they gotten faster-than-light drives? How did they create stealth systems that fooled Concordance sensors? He ordered his fleet to tighten formation, to concentrate their shields and create overlapping fields of fire. Some of his captains obeyed. Others panicked and broke formation, trying to reach the outer system and jump to safety. The human ships hunted them down ruthlessly. Jake finally received orders to engage. The Valiant and the conventional fleet moved forward, their conventional weapons adding to the chaos. They were not as deadly as the Midnight Armada, but they were still effective. Missiles and particle beams found targets. Alien ships that were already damaged or distracted fell to the combined assault. Kevin brought the Phoenix Rising into close range with a Concordance heavy cruiser. His ship was smaller and faster. He made 3 attack runs, each time appearing from a different angle, firing a full spread of weapons, and disappearing back into the darkness. On the third run, the cruiser's shields collapsed. A dozen human ships converged on it immediately, tearing it apart with concentrated fire. The battle raged for 6 hours before the first pause came. The Concordance fleet had lost nearly 100 ships. They pulled back to regroup, forming a defensive sphere around their flagship. The human ships did not pursue. They had achieved their objective. The aliens were bleeding, confused, and no longer confident in their inevitable victory. Lisa received damage reports from her fleet. 32 human ships destroyed, 18 more damaged too severely to continue fighting. The casualties were heavy but acceptable given what they faced. The Midnight Armada had proven itself. Now came the hard part. The Concordance would adapt, learn from their mistakes, and come back with new tactics. On his flagship, Vector called an emergency council. His officers argued, some wanting to retreat, others demanding revenge. Vector silenced them. They would receive reinforcements from nearby systems. In 3 days, another 200 Concordance ships would arrive. Then they would crush these upstart humans properly. But for the first time in his long career, Vector felt something cold in his chest. Doubt. The humans fought like demons, with weapons that seemed designed specifically to kill Concordance vessels. What else were they hiding? What other surprises waited in the darkness? He looked at the tactical display and realized the truth. This was not going to be an easy conquest. The humans had made that clear. If the Concordance wanted Earth, they would have to pay for it in blood. The battle entered its third day, and both sides were exhausted. The Concordance fleet had adapted to humanity's tactics, deploying their own stealth countermeasures and sensor grids that made surprise attacks harder. They fought in tight formations now, overlapping their shields, creating zones of space that human ships could not penetrate without taking massive damage. Commander Jake Morrison's ship, the EDS Valiant, bore the scars of 2 days of constant combat. Hull breaches on 3 decks, 1 engine operating at 60% capacity, and shields that flickered whenever they took a direct hit. But Jake and his crew kept fighting, making attack runs whenever they saw an opening. They encountered a Concordance heavy cruiser during one such run. The alien ship was damaged, but still dangerous, its weapons tracking the Valiant with deadly precision. Jake tried to break away, but his damaged engine could not provide enough acceleration. Energy beams sliced through his remaining shields and tore into the hull. "Hull breach on decks 4 and 5, his tactical officer reported. "Engine 2 is offline. We are venting atmosphere." Jake made the decision instantly. If they were going to die anyway, they would take the enemy with them. He ordered the crew to evacuate in escape pods while he remained on the bridge. The Valiant still had 1 working engine and enough maneuvering thrusters to control their trajectory. He pointed the ship at the heavy cruiser and pushed the throttle to maximum. The alien vessel tried to evade, but it was also damaged and slow. Jake watched the distance close on his display. 5 kilometers, 3 kilometers, 1 kilometer. He could see the alien hull through his view screen now, scarred and burning. He closed his eyes and whispered an apology to his ship. Then 2 human vessels decloaked on either side of the heavy cruiser. The EDS Wraith and the EDS Midnight Requiem opened fire with everything they had. The cruiser's shields, already weakened, collapsed completely. Explosions tore through its hull. It broke in half, both sections tumbling away from each other. Jake pulled up hard, narrowly avoiding collision with the debris field. A rescue shuttle appeared on his sensors, broadcasting friendly codes. "Commander Morrison, this is Rescue 7. Remain on your bridge. We are coming alongside to extract you." Jake laughed with relief and exhaustion. He had been certain he was going to die. The rescue team pulled him from the Valiant minutes before the ship's reactor went critical. He watched from the shuttle as his vessel exploded, a brief flash of light in the darkness. Back on Earth, Dr. Marcus Brandt studied the battle data and realized they were running out of time. The Concordance reinforcements would arrive in 36 hours. When they did, Earth's numerical advantage would disappear. They had 1 chance left, 1 desperate gamble that might end the war or doom them all. Operation Daybreak. The plan had existed since the beginning of the Midnight Protocol, but no one thought they would actually need to use it. The strategy was simple in concept, but nearly impossible in execution. A strike team would penetrate the Concordance flagship's defenses and deliver a reality fracture bomb directly into its core. The weapon would tear a hole in space-time itself, creating a cascading dimensional rupture that would destroy everything within 10,000 kilometers. The flagship, its escort vessels, and the strike team. It was a suicide mission, but it was humanity's best chance to break the Concordance command structure. Captain Kevin Drake volunteered immediately when Admiral Lisa briefed the senior officers. He had survived more combat than any other pilot in the Midnight Armada. His crew was experienced, battle-hardened, and willing to follow him anywhere. If anyone could make it through the alien defenses, it would be Kevin. 11 other ships volunteered to join him. They would form a spearhead, punching through the Concordance defensive sphere and clearing a path for Kevin's ship. Most of them would not survive. Everyone understood that. Lisa addressed all of Earth one final time before the mission launched. The transmission was broadcast on every channel, in every language, to every person on the planet. She spoke calmly, but with absolute conviction. People of Earth, we face the greatest challenge in our history. An alien empire has come to our home demanding we surrender everything we are. They expected us to kneel. They were wrong. For 3 days, we have fought, and we have made them bleed. Today, we strike the final blow. Whatever happens next, know this: humanity will never surrender. We will fight with our last breath, our last ship, our last weapon. We are Earth, and we do not kneel. The transmission was not meant only for humanity. Lisa knew the Concordance would intercept it. She wanted them to hear it. She wanted them to understand exactly what they were facing. On the alien flagship, Emissary Vector listened to the translation and felt something he had not experienced in centuries: fear. These humans meant every word. They would rather die than submit. That made them more dangerous than any enemy the Concordance had ever faced. Kevin's squadron accelerated toward the Concordance flagship. 12 ships moving in tight formation, their shields overlapping, their weapons firing constantly to clear a path. The aliens threw everything at them. Energy beams, missiles, fighter craft, defensive platforms. The space between the human ships and the flagship became a storm of fire and destruction. The first ship died within 30 seconds. The EDS Vengeance took a direct hit from a heavy particle lance, and its reactor detonated. The second and third ships died moments later, torn apart by concentrated fire. Kevin's tactical display showed friendly contacts winking out one by one, but he did not slow down. He could not afford to. Lieutenant Katie Sullivan fired singularity torpedoes ahead of them, clearing lanes through the alien defenses. Each weapon created temporary chaos, forcing enemy ships to evade or be consumed. The squadron pushed through the gaps, trading fire with every Concordance vessel they passed. 6 ships remained when they reached the flagship's outer shields. Kevin ordered them to concentrate all weapons on a single point. Particle beams, missiles, and exotic munitions hammered the same spot on the shield for 15 seconds. The shield flickered, wavered, and finally collapsed in that sector. 3 more ships died, providing cover as Kevin's vessel, the Phoenix Rising, penetrated the gap. He was inside the flagship's defensive perimeter now, dodging point defense weapons and launching bays. His ship took hits from every direction. Hull plates vaporized, systems failed, warning alarms screamed through the bridge. Katie armed the reality fracture bomb. It was stored in a specially shielded compartment in the ship's core, a weapon so dangerous that just arming it made the air feel heavy. The bomb would detonate in 30 seconds once activated. Kevin had to get close enough to ensure the flagship was within the blast radius. He pushed the Phoenix Rising into a final acceleration burn, heading straight for the flagship's reactor signatures. The alien vessel loomed enormous on his view screen. He could see weapons ports, launch bays, and sensor arrays. He could imagine the thousands of crew members inside, scrambling to stop him. 20 seconds to detonation. The flagship fired everything at the Phoenix Rising. The ship's shields were gone. Armor evaporated under the onslaught. Fires burned through 3 decks. The bridge lost atmosphere, and Kevin's pressure suit inflated automatically. 10 seconds. Kevin activated the escape pod beneath his command chair. The pod was small, barely large enough for one person, but it had powerful engines and thick armor. It would eject him at the last moment and accelerate away at crushing speed. 5 seconds. Kevin punched the eject button. The pod blasted away from the dying Phoenix Rising, pinning him to his seat with brutal force. He watched through the pod's viewport as his ship continued forward, trailing fire and debris. The reality fracture bomb detonated 500 meters from the flagship's hull. For a fraction of a second, space-time itself broke. The bomb created a tear in the fabric of reality, and through that tear, forces from beyond the universe poured into normal space. The flagship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist, erased from reality along with 40 supporting vessels caught in the blast radius. The explosion was visible from Earth, a second sun that burned in the night sky for 3 seconds before fading. People around the world stopped what they were doing and stared upward, not knowing what they were seeing but feeling in their hearts that something important had just happened. Kevin's escape pod tumbled through space, its systems damaged by the blast's shockwave. He was unconscious from the acceleration, his suit keeping him alive. A rescue ship would find him 2 hours later, still alive, still breathing, the man who had just killed an alien flagship and survived. The destruction of the Concordance flagship changed everything. Without Emissary Vector and his command staff, the alien fleet lost its coordination. Individual captains made their own decisions, and those decisions varied wildly. Some tried to retreat to the outer system, others attempted to continue the attack. A few even tried to negotiate directly with nearby human ships. The Midnight Armada hunted down those who fled. It was brutal work, chasing damaged vessels across millions of kilometers, but Admiral Lisa had given clear orders. No mercy, no quarter. If the Concordance wanted to leave, they would leave without their ships. The aliens had come to conquer, and they would leave humbled. Commander Jake Morrison, recovered from his evacuation and given command of a new vessel, led a squadron that cornered 3 Concordance cruisers near Neptune. The alien ships were damaged and low on fuel, unable to jump to faster-than-light speeds. They broadcast surrender offers, promising to leave the Sol system and never return. Jake remembered the ultimatum Earth had received just 5 days earlier. Surrender or die. No negotiation, no compromise. He was tempted to give them the same choice, but he was not like them. He opened a channel. Concordance vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. Power down all weapons and surrender your ships. Your crews will be taken prisoner and eventually released. Refuse, and we will destroy you. 2 of the cruisers surrendered. The third tried to run and was cut apart by singularity torpedoes. Jake felt no satisfaction from it, only exhaustion. This war should never have happened. The battle finally ended not with dramatic explosions, but with quiet communications. The remaining Concordance forces, roughly 40% of the original fleet, assembled beyond Pluto and established contact with Earth. They wanted to negotiate terms. Admiral Lisa agreed to talk, but this time, humanity negotiated from strength. The meeting took place via long-range communication. Lisa sat in her command center, flanked by political leaders from every major nation. On the screen, a Concordance admiral appeared, an older alien whose scales had faded to pale gray. His name was Thelkar, and he had been Vector's second-in-command. Admiral Kerrigan, he began, his voice translated by human computers. The Concordance acknowledges that conquering Earth would be costly beyond acceptable parameters. We propose a cessation of hostilities and the withdrawal of all Concordance forces from your system. Lisa leaned forward. Here are our terms. The Concordance will recognize Earth's sovereignty over all space within the heliopause. No Concordance vessel will enter Sol system without explicit permission. You will provide us with complete star charts of Concordance space and data on all species within your territory. You will acknowledge that Earth is not a subject species, but an independent power. Accept these terms, or we will hunt down every ship in your fleet. Thelkar's expression was difficult to read, but his hesitation was clear. The terms were harsh. They gave Earth everything, and the Concordance nothing. But he looked at the tactical data, at the list of destroyed vessels, at the reports from captains who had faced weapons they could not understand. We accept your terms. The war ended with those 4 words. The Concordance fleet withdrew beyond the heliopause within 48 hours, leaving behind wreckage, escape pods full of prisoners, and a changed galaxy. Word spread quickly through faster-than-light communication networks. Earth, a species the Concordants had dismissed as primitive, had fought them to a standstill. Captain Kevin Drake woke up in a hospital on the moon 3 days after his mission. His body was covered in bruises from the acceleration, and several ribs had cracked despite his pressure suit. But he was alive. The doctors told him he was a hero. Kevin did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had been lucky enough to survive. Dr. Marcus Brandt watched the Concordance fleet retreat and allowed himself a moment of relief. 20 years of work had paid off. The Midnight Protocol had saved humanity. But he knew this was not the end. It was the beginning. Earth had proven it could fight, but now they needed to prove they could thrive. Admiral Lisa stood in the observation deck of the rebuilt Lunar Command Center and looked at Earth hanging in space. The planet bore scars from the battle. Debris orbited in dangerous clouds. Several cities had been damaged by falling wreckage. Thousands of people had died. But Earth survived, and humanity remained free. She received reports of deep space listening posts detecting increased chatter on alien communication channels. Other species were talking about Earth, asking questions. What were humans? How did they develop faster-than-light technology so quickly? How did they design weapons that could destroy Concordance vessels? The answers to those questions would shape humanity's future. Lisa knew they could not retreat back into isolation. The galaxy knew about Earth now. They would come, some as friends, some as enemies, all as curious observers watching to see what humanity would do next. 6 months after the battle, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of humanity's newest ship, the EDS Revelation. It was larger than any vessel Earth had built before, designed not for stealth but for exploration and power projection. The conventional fleet had been rebuilt and expanded. The Midnight Armada remained active, but was now just one part of Earth's military strength. Jake's mission was to conduct humanity's first long-range patrol beyond the Kuiper Belt, to show the galaxy that Earth was not cowering behind its defenses. He checked his crew roster, experienced officers from the battle, eager young recruits who wanted to prove themselves, and several alien prisoners who had chosen to stay on Earth and help humanity navigate galactic politics. The ship's engines came online, and Jake gave the order to proceed. The Revelation accelerated smoothly, passing Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. They crossed into the Kuiper Belt, moving faster than any human vessel had traveled outside of combat. This was humanity's future, not hiding, not waiting, moving forward into the unknown with eyes open and weapons ready. Dr. Amanda Chen continued her research on advanced weapon systems. The Concordance technology recovered from wrecked ships provided new insights. Within a decade, Earth's weapons would match or exceed anything in the known galaxy. She worked with teams from dozens of nations, all focused on the same goal. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared. Kevin Drake became the face of Earth's new space program. His image appeared on recruitment posters, in educational programs, and in news broadcasts. He gave speeches about courage and sacrifice. Children learned his name in schools, but Kevin himself rarely appeared in public. He was training the next generation of pilots, teaching them everything he had learned about faster-than-light combat and stealth operations. One evening, he stood in a simulator facility on Earth and watched young pilots practice attack runs. They were good, better than he had been at their age, because they could learn from real combat data instead of theoretical exercises. That was humanity's advantage. They learned fast. They adapted. They survived. Admiral Lisa remained in command of Earth's defenses. She testified before political committees about military needs and budget allocations. She oversaw the construction of new bases on Titan, Europa, and Enceladus. She established protocols for first contact with new species. Her work never ended, but she would not have wanted it any other way. Late at night, when her duties allowed, she visited the monument that had been built on the lunar surface. It listed the names of every person who died during the battle. 3,217 names, soldiers, pilots, engineers, and civilians. They had given everything so that humanity could remain free. Lisa placed her hand on the monument's surface and made a silent promise. Their sacrifice would mean something. Earth would thrive. Humanity would take its place among the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers and defenders. The galaxy had ordered Earth to kneel. Instead, humanity set the stars alight with the fire of their defiance. The message echoed across every civilized world, carried by traders, diplomats, and travelers. Earth was not prey. Earth was not a subject species. Earth was a warrior world, and the stars would remember what happened when someone tried to break them. In the years that followed, other species approached Earth cautiously, offering trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Some wanted to learn about human technology. Others wanted to understand the psychology of a species that refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Earth accepted some offers and rejected others, always careful, always prepared. Deep space listening posts continued to monitor galactic communications. The reports were consistent. Every species asked the same questions. What are humans? How do we avoid conflict with them? What happens if we threaten Earth? The answer came from Earth itself, broadcast on open channels so that everyone could hear. Admiral Lisa spoke the words, but they represented the collective voice of humanity. We are Earth. We are humanity. We came from a small blue world, and we reached for the stars. We will not kneel. We will not surrender. We will defend our home and our freedom with everything we have. But we also offer friendship to those who come in peace. We are not your enemies unless you make us so. Remember that. The stars remember. We remember. The broadcast ended, but its message continued to spread across the galaxy. Earth had announced itself to the universe, not with weakness or fear, but with strength and dignity. The Midnight Armada remained in the shadows, always watching, always ready. The conventional fleet patrolled openly, showing the flag and protecting human interests. Commander Jake Morrison, now an admiral himself, stood on the bridge of a new generation of starship and looked at a tactical display showing human vessels across the solar system and beyond. They had stations in neighboring star systems now, built with permission from local species or in unclaimed space. Humanity was expanding, carefully and deliberately, making friends and preparing for enemies. The galaxy had changed. Earth was no longer alone or helpless. They were players now, a force to be respected and, if necessary, feared. And if the Concordance or anyone else ever came back threatening war, they would find humanity even more prepared than before. The stars burned in the darkness, ancient and eternal. And among them, a new light had appeared. Earth. Humanity. A species that refused to kneel and set the galaxy alight with the fire of their determination. The story was just beginning.